Support for WERU provided by the Republican Journal, on newsstands every Wednesday serving Belfast and Waldo County, or on the web at waldo.villagesoup.com.
And the time is 10 o'clock. This is Community Radio, WERU-FM, 89.9 Blue Hill and 99.9 Bangor. Stay tuned for Bangor Area Comments with your host, Meaghan LaSala.
Good morning. You're listening to Bangor Area Comments. This is an hour show dedicated to people, stories, issues, and arts in the greater Bangor area. I'm your host, Meaghan LaSala, and this is going to be my last month hosting the Bangor Area Comments, so it's been really great to be with you, and we are looking for someone to take over the show. If you're interested, you should get in touch, and I'll be happy to talk with you about it. It's 469-6600. I have been with WERU this year as an AmeriCorps Vista, helping launch our new 99.9 FM signal, and this show has been part of that effort, and it's been a really great year. And let's see, I just want a quick recap on some of the things we've done this year to try to do some outreach in the Bangor area with the WERU community. We had a Valentine's dance back in February, a live broadcast dance with some of our music programmers, Corey Paradise and DJ Magnus. We did a big music and record and gear sale back in April around the time that our new signal was going up. And let's see, we have been doing some volunteer trainings out in the Bangor area. We've been doing a lot of coverage of different community issues in the Bangor area, and it's been a good year. I'd like to let you know that this Tuesday, that's tomorrow, we're going to be hosting the Bangor Greendrinks, which we're really excited about. We're partnering with Bangor Metro, which is a restaurant in the downtown Bangor area that specializes in providing local food, and it's going to be Market Bistro. What did I say? I said Bangor Metro, which is where one of our guests is coming from today. So Market Bistro, yes, it's at 735 Main Street in downtown Bangor, or just outside of downtown Bangor. And there's going to be free food, free beer, most importantly, live music, and an artisan farmers market at Bangor Market Bistro in downtown Bangor. So please swing by. We'll be happy to have you. Today we have 4 guests live in the studio, and we're going to be talking about attracting young people to Maine and attracting young people to the Bangor area. So with us live we have Johann Sabbath from Fusion Bangor, and also from Bangor Greendrinks, in the interest of full disclosure. We have Emily Burnham from the Bangor Daily News, also Ann Dailey, who is a writer and works with Peacemeal Farm in Dixmont, and Melanie Brooks, who is managing editor at Bangor Metro and also an adjunct professor.
Yes. I teach at the New England School of Communications as well.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Today the topic is attracting young people to Maine, which is sort of an ongoing topic of conversation in this area. You may know in the 2010 census, it was found again that Maine is the oldest state in the nation. And in 2009, the Maine Department of Education reported decreases of 3,000 to 4,000 children per year from the area. So back in May 2011, there was a meeting of Fusion Bangor, Momentum Aroostook, and Realize Maine network groups. They had do you want to tell us a little bit about that event, Johann?
Sure. That event was called the Maine Young Professional Exchange, and I do stress to all of the listeners that by young professional, we do not mean white-collar, suit and tie kind of young professional. It does include any collar, green collar, blue collar, no collar, what have you. And the meeting was kind of an experimental workshop where we brought young professionals from all over the state, busload of like 24 of them down from Aroostook County, to have conversations about ways to attract young people and retain them to and in their communities, and secondly, how to engage and empower them in their communities for the purpose of encouraging them to put down roots and stay. And Angus King kicked us off with a kind of like top 10 reasons why he loves Maine keynote, and that was a lot of fun. And then there were the conversations throughout the day, notes were taken, and moving forward, the Realize Maine Network, which is, that's realizemaine.org. It's a network of like-minded nonprofits that are committed to, attracting and retaining young people in Maine and empowering them. They're going to carry the Maine Young Professional Exchange forward in other communities and really get at those two main questions and hopefully produce a report of actionable recommendations and develop a little communication strategy for that report to make sure that the state's leading decision makers and public policy makers and the real stakeholders in our economy and our communities can read that information.
So this first exchange, that was focused on the Bangor area? Is that so? They're kind of doing it regionally?
Yes, this was more or less central and northern Maine, I would say, while there were participants from, I think, the mid-coast region, and we did have someone from Portland, I think, come up.
Great. And so Realize Maine has been kind of organizing this effort.
Well, this original effort, the first exchange, was developed by Momentum Aroostook, which is a sister organization to Fusion. They're based in Presque Isle, and Realize Maine, the Realize Maine Network will be the vehicle for replicating the workshops throughout the state.
Great. So I'd like to have a little conversation around what brings us all to the table today. I kind of invited you all to be part of this conversation for various reasons. Anne, you are a young farmer who recently moved back to the state. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience living in Maine and what brought you back to the area?
Sure. To start, I did grow up in Maine, so I suppose I was always meant a little bit to come back, I'd say. But having lived in upstate New York for several years in a very close-knit community where I was writing professionally, I sort of recognized that I needed to get my hands in the dirt a little bit more. And I think that Maine is uniquely positioned to support young farmers. And having grown up here, it seemed like a good place for me to try to put down some roots, get my hands in the dirt, and start farming a little bit more than I had been. So I moved back about a year and a half ago, and I started working at Peacemeal Farm in Dixmont, where I'm still working. I also work at Johnny Selected Seeds during the winter. Writing was something I could do anywhere. And writing about food and agriculture specifically, it seemed like I should try to do that professionally as well. So as I said, there's something about Maine. I think there are still a lot of farmers here, and there are also a lot of new farmers here. We have MOFGA, we have Maine Farmland Trust, Maine Farm Link. There's this infrastructure here, both literal in terms of land and barns and old farms that need love and care and someone to work the land, but there's also these organizations that are so supportive to young farmers, and not only helping them to gain the skills they need, but then helping them find pieces of land to work themselves, which is about retaining the young people that this state does attract. So for me, it was a sort of obvious choice when I wanted to be farming to come to a state that farming is so central to what happens here.
Great. I'd love to talk in just a little bit more about what your experience of those organizations and that sort of young network and support system has been like. But first, I'd like to go around and just talk a little bit with some of our other guests, too. Melanie, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what connects you to this topic?
Sure. Like Anne, I grew up in Maine. I grew up in Orono. And when I was 18, like many of my friends, I couldn't wait to leave. So I left for a while, and I got my education elsewhere. I lived in Boston, I lived in Baltimore, I lived in Florida, and I ended up moving to New York City to get my graduate degree. Then I sort of felt the pull of my family. I had lived away from them for so long, and they all live here. And so after grad school, I decided to take a break from city life, and I moved home, and I lived with my grandmother for a while. And my sister was pregnant at the time, so I kind of came home and did the family thing, never intending to stay, mind you. But I did end up staying. I moved to Portland for a little while, and then the job at Bangor Metro opened up, and I had been freelancing for them since 2006, I would say. And the job opened up that they needed someone to take over an editor position. And since I had been freelancing for them, they knew my capabilities. And so I talked to Tori Britton and Mark Wellman, and they hired me. And I came back to Bangor and lived here and bought a house and have been here ever since.
Great. And Emily Burnham, you work at Bangor Daily News.
Yes, I do.
And how do you find it being a reporter, a young person? How was that opportunity open up to you?
Well, I'm from Maine originally. I'm from Searsport. Went to the University of Maine. Actually got my start in radio. Started at WMB. I had a show there for almost 8 years, and worked there for a long time, and also did stuff at the main campus. So I and also have always really been into like music and theater and arts, and surrounding myself with those people and learning about them, and doing some of that myself. So I've always been a writer, so I knew that was what I wanted to do with my life in some capacity. And when an internship opportunity opened at the Beanie, and I took it, stayed there for a couple of years. The featured writer for the lifestyle second position came up, and I got it. So I've been doing that for 3.5 years now, and it's really a incredible job to have, because I get to work with the coolest people and just search out interesting people that do things, and not just the performing arts, but in food, in media, and just interesting stories about people doing interesting things in Maine. That's really kind of what I get to do with my job, and it's pretty awesome. So and tell stories, especially about young people, because I'm a young person. I'm in Maine, and I think we all can kind of empathize with what it's like to live here and be in your 20s, or in your 30s, or whatever it might be. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And journalism in particular, and media is a field that is going through a lot of changes, and finding opportunities in the journalism field is, some say, more difficult than it has been in the past.
Most would say.
Most would say, yes.
I think what young people have as a benefit is that in schools now they're learning how to do everything. And when they go into the field, you can't get a job in journalism just being a writer anymore. You have to know how to take photographs. You need to know how to edit video. You need to know how to make a podcast. So I think when people come here, especially in our field, they sort of break themselves in this community.
So the topic today, you're listening to Bangor Area Commons on your community radio station WERU-FM, and the topic today is attracting young people to Maine and attracting young people to the Bangor area. We have a couple folks from media in the studio, Emily Burnham from the Bangor Daily News, Melanie Brooks from Bangor Metro, Johann Sabbath, who works with Fusion Bangor, which is a branch of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right. Fusion Bangor is a program of the Chamber of Commerce, and it's a place for young people to get connected with each other in the community. So Fusion helps produce a lot of events and hold things to that nature.
Great. I want to talk more about that in just a second. And we also have in the studio Dailey, who is a farmer, works with Peacemeal Farm, recently moved back to the area, and who also has experience writing and doing work in the media world. So Johann, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Fusion Bangor and what that program is and what you do?
All right. Fusion Bangor is hot. That's all I got to say. It's absolutely super hot. So what do we do at Fusion Bangor? I think the best... Melanie is also on the board of Fusion Bangor. So really what Fusion Bangor holds events and creates programs that attract young people to get together and hang out. And Fusion Bangor also supports individuals that do that outside of Fusion. So it's very much at the center of a lot of new fun stuff happening in Bangor. I could tell you about a few different things that we do, if you like.
Please do, yeah.
Well, we hold some social events with the different universities in the area, and we try to create a space for graduate students and sometimes undergraduate students just to get connected and hang out with other young folks who are living and working in the region, because we think that building those relationships might help them find work and stay here. We also hold a monthly Noontime Networks luncheon event around a different educational topic each month. And those are a lot of fun, and people will just come and eat lunch and meet new people and learn something new. And Fusion Bangor is also a partner, really a lead partner in helping to establish the Pachakacha Bangor, which is a really fun kind of arts and culture, creativity, idea sharing, presentation style event. We just had our first one the other month, and our next event is on August 19, and we're accepting submissions for that. So
I attended the first Pachakacha. Could you please tell our listeners a little bit about what that is like, what they might experience if they were to attend one?
Sure. It's a good example of a minimally symmetric, just like viral social event, similar to a Greendrinks, something
minimally symmetric.
Meaning that
Please explain.
There are parameters, there are standards. Pachakacha was established in Japan in the early 2000s, and it was established by some designers who said, hey, we really want to kind of show off to the community the different design work that we're doing. And it was so successful, other cities wanted to start it, so they established a very simple framework for a brand sharing agreement. And today, I think there's almost like 300 or 400 Pachakacha cities across the world. And so if you were to attend a Pachakacha in Bangor, you would have 8 presentations on stage. The presenter would be at a microphone, and there would be a projection screen with a projector. And the presenter would be telling you about a creative endeavor or accomplishment or idea that they have. It could be whittling, it could be music, it could be creative finance, who knows? As long as you can frame it in a creative paradigm, you can present and show everybody what you're doing. You have 20 slides, 20 seconds per slides, it's timed, so it's just like really fast-paced and fun, and a new way to kind of bring people together of different interests around a shared context of creativity.
So it's really building community around creativity, which quite easily you can see how it fits into the idea of building community that would be attractive and inviting for young people.
Yes.
I was struck by how poetic it really was. Like the folks get up and they talk about their work, and they have 20 slides to illustrate their work of photographs or whatever. And but it was really about storytelling. Very good storytellers, people very poetically and poignantly able to capture in a short amount of time what they were doing.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. And as an employee of the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce, I think the kinds of skills that are applied through a Pachakacha are 100% transferable to business, because in any business, whether you're selling stories or selling vegetables or advertisements, you got to, make a good pitch and engage somebody.
Absolutely. We are going to open the phone lines at about 10:30. So you're listening to Bangor Area Commons on WERU Community Radio, and the topic is attracting young people to the state and attracting young people to the Bangor area. So get your phones ready. The number is 469-0500, and in just about 10 minutes, we'll start taking calls, questions, comments, things you would like to add to the conversation. Anne, would you like to tell us a little bit more about what you were talking about before, your experience of the young farmer community and the way that the state really holds and supports young farmers in the area?
Absolutely. When I was planning to come back to Maine and not knowing that much about the farming community, having been away for several years, I went to the Common Ground Fair. The tent that I was sharing with a young farmer organization that I work with was right next to WERU. I met all sorts of amazing young farmers that day. I heard speeches. You walk around this sort of magical day and get a sense of what this community is like. And it felt so vibrant and so rich. And I think that's a very magical feeling, but there's a lot of very concrete work that goes into that. And that work is done by organizations like MAFCA that put on the fair, who have apprenticeship programs followed by journey person programs to pair young farmers with experienced farmers. You have Maine Farmland Trust that's preserving farmland, and Maine Farm Link that is linking farmers with that land that they're preserving. So there are all of these organizations with people on the ground doing this work to make sure that the support is there for young farmers. And in a more ambiguous way, you then have this vibrant community of people who have potlucks and help each other when they need to, fix a barn or build a hoop house. And they just call each other up and show up and help. And I think that it's interesting, the point of Maine being an older state. I think that along with that comes a lot of knowledge and wisdom that I think we're sort of lucky to have, especially in something like farming or in the trades, that there are a lot of people here who have successfully done this work for a long time, and now young people are interested, and there's a lot of people to learn from. I think that's very important. And I think that people stay if they feel community. And that's something that really just is a feeling. And I think that, these young farmers who are apprenticing on a farm and living there and going to potlucks at other farms with the farmers that they're staying with, and being able to experience things like the fair or the different workshops that MAFCA puts on, gradually over time start to feel that community. And not everyone that comes and works on a farm in Maine stays, but quite a number of them do. And I think that's because of the work that different organizations that I mentioned, like MAFCA, like Maine Farmland Trust, and Maine Farm Link are doing. So, I feel very lucky to have experienced some of the programs that they offer, and I think that they're just continuing to ramp up those efforts as we move along here.
Absolutely. Are there, in addition to the programs that do support farmers, are there gaps that you see? Are there things that young farmers are still struggling with?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing probably is capital and land. You can gain all of this knowledge, but then you have to get onto a piece of land, and so I think that there are organizations working on that, and I know young people who've been able to purchase farms in Maine in the past couple of years with support, even from the Farm Service Agency and the USDA. I think that a lot of the organizations I mentioned are aware of that, but I think that there still is a big gap, and that's something that we need to work on, is land accessibility to people, because Maine has, as I mentioned earlier, so much land still, and so many barns that are falling down and homes that are old and need somebody to live in them, and land that should be worked. But that doesn't mean that young people have the money to buy those places. So that's the biggest obstacle that I see. But it's something that I think is definitely being focused on. And so I don't feel like that's insurmountable, but it certainly is the biggest obstacle.
Emily, from Bangor Daily News, I have a similar question for you. Do you see that there are young people in the area, maybe coming from the university, that would want to be doing similar work and that maybe aren't able to find a home or a place of employment?
Well, I really think that's probably the biggest obstacle to attracting and retaining anybody, and especially in central and northern and eastern Maine, is jobs, basically. Jobs or at the very least, finding a way to make a living. I just remember interviewing a couple people that started their own business a couple weeks ago, and they said, we both really wanted to stay in Maine, but we had to find a way to be able to. And so they started their own business, and I think that you have seen, especially in Bangor, an upsurge in sort of entrepreneurs, starting a shop, or starting some sort of like making food at home and selling it, making things like that are really DIY. You do see an upswing in that, but I think that comes out of a shortage of viable employment that's out there, and until something sort of tips that balance from the scarcity of that to there being a little more of that, that's the biggest issue. Now, that doesn't mean that, like I said, there's still plenty of opportunity for doing your own thing, for trying something different and seeing if that works. I have a friend who's I had a couple friends just open a business in downtown Bangor last month. My friend Summer is opening a shoe store in downtown Bangor in August. And that's all and I think especially Bangor in particular, just in the past maybe 3 or 4 years has already, become a much more vibrant, attractive place, especially to younger people, young families, younger people in general. And that only, helps to feed that kind of growing energy that I think probably we could all say is a little palpable at this point. Even 5 years ago, I don't think that was the case. When you first moved here, Melanie, was that like...
When I first moved here, growing up here, there was really nothing in downtown Bangor. I mean, my parents grew up here, and they would go every Friday night to go shopping with their families because there were no malls at the time. And I think in the past few years, there have been some businesses that have staying power in downtown Bangor area. And I think what's helping them out is sort of the surge of people who want to support these young entrepreneurs. It's great. We want these empty storefronts in downtown Bangor to have a business in them. But in order to do that, we have to frequent these businesses, and we need to make the decision to support our local business owners. And I think that shift is coming and has been coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of the places downtown, not only are they coming up with some creative businesses and ideas for businesses, but people are changing the way they shop and spend their money, and they're doing it more locally.
Mm-hmm. So lack of existing jobs is clearly an issue, but in terms of becoming a small entrepreneur and starting your own business, how do you think that process compares in the Bangor area to other places in the state or to other places in the country?
Well, I think Bangor is a great place to be an entrepreneur when you compare it to other places in the country. You can move to downtown Bangor and buy a building on the main drag and live in that building and run multiple businesses out of that building for a fraction of the cost that it would cost you to do that in a city like Boston or even Portland. So if you want to compare the risk at hand, maybe there's less risk doing something like that in Bangor than there is in other markets. Plus, I find that in Maine in general, especially in Bangor, I've lived in Portland for a while before taking this job in Bangor, and I find that the Maine business community is more supportive of entrepreneurs than any business community that I've encountered. When I was living in Montana, California, Washington, D.C., there's a real sense of competition, and I don't think that sense of competition is lost here, but I think there are additional values applied to that business competition, values of community, whereas entrepreneurs want to see each other succeed, and values of quality of place, where entrepreneurs they care about the aesthetic and social and cultural environment around their business, and a value of accessibility. I think in Maine, and particularly the Bangor region, you are a phone call away from your city councilors, your mayor, the vice president of business loans at your commercial bank, your governor, heck, your senator. You can reach out to all of these people and collaborate with them. You can call the biggest companies in the state and speak with their CEOs and speak with their director of whatever it is department that you could learn something from. And they're all very accessible. So I think some of those things make the region a great place to start a business.
You're listening to Bangor Area Commons on your community radio station, WERU, 89.9 Blue Hill and 99.9 in Bangor. The topic today is attracting young people to Maine and attracting young people to the Bangor area. And I do want to open the phone lines up now. If you have been listening to the conversation and you have a question or a comment, just something to add to the discussion, please give us a call. It's 469-0500. We'd love to hear from you. I did have a question just a second ago, but the break just took it right out of my head. But so we were talking about becoming an entrepreneur, a small entrepreneur in the downtown area.
Actually, I help plan the noontime networks that we hold for Fusion every third Thursday at Wellman Commons. And last month we had a roundtable of small business owners that are either from the area or have moved to the area, and they were all very different, owning very different businesses, and they did say, every single one of them, that the hardest thing that they had to do, much like what Anne was saying, was find the money to start. They all had really great stories and experiences to share with how they overcame that. And I think that, like Anne was saying, that's the hardest part. People want a job, and people want to start a job, and they see a need and they want to fill that need, but all they need is just a loan or something to help them get started.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, can you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
It's Yo in Tremont.
Hi, Yo.
I wanted to say that it is a great idea to get affordable real estate to create an urban community, and personally I've had some experience in that department, having been involved with the Slack factory in Belfast. And for 7 years we ran just the kind of thing you're talking about, not so much living accommodations, but spaces that we offered to artists and craftspeople who I suppose could be considered entrepreneurs on an individual basis. It is a wonderful opportunity as urbanization spreads out and various neighborhoods decay and properties become available at an affordable price. I did want to offer one caveat, and the thing that stopped us in Belfast was we found that there were people who didn't want us there, and even amongst the participants. And our big mistake was not providing for protecting ourselves both politically and financially. The legal arrangements that we had for ownership made it too difficult for somebody to take his dishes and go home, and our financial arrangements didn't provide us with any kind of a cushion when adversity came. So I do want to offer that caveat to provide some protection to undertake this. It's a marvelous and very rewarding thing to do, and Bangor could certainly use some revitalization.
Great. Well,
Thanks
thank you.
so much for
Thanks so
putting
much
on
for
this
your
show.
call, Yo. Johann?
I just wanted to respond to some of what Yo said, and I've definitely, it's funny, people call me Yo as well, so what's up, Yo? I've definitely heard about this, but I've heard a lot more about it than I've seen. I think I've experienced a lot more of the opposite, of people wanting entrepreneurs and young people living and working downtown. I think we see it there's two different ways that I see it. One, the Arena Yes campaign in Bangor. Fusion Bangor stepped up to the table and contributed a lot of intelligence and volunteer power to that campaign. And there were people saying, we don't want the town to change. We don't want this new thing built. There were people who were definitely afraid of the way that was going to change downtown Bangor. And, 3 out of 4 people who went out and voted that day said, well, we actually do want that to change. And then the other thing, I think, I don't think it will be 6 months before we see a viable co-working space open up in Bangor. I know that, there's 2 large co-working spaces in Portland right now, and one of them just maxed out on membership, and they're expanding. It's called Think Tank. It's really cool. The other one's Peloton Labs, and I think we'll be seeing these kinds of things in downtown Bangor pretty soon.
Can you explain what that is, co-working space?
Oh, it's it would be taking a kind of a large office space and divvying it up into either small private offices or shared cubicle offices, and then charging entrepreneurs a monthly rate of, $100 to $150, depending upon the services offered for use of this downtown working space and meeting conference space.
Co-working allows people that can't necessarily afford their own office space, a place outside their home where they can go and, especially if they work at home and they have small children, a quiet space to go, have a professional phone line, access to a copier, your computer. It's a really affordable way for somebody to have an office space.
The phone lines are open. The topic for today is attracting young people to Maine and attracting young people to the Bangor area. and the number is 469-0500. I remember my question from earlier. Johann, you and I had an interesting conversation as I was inviting you to come on the show about the paradigm of keeping young people in Maine versus the paradigm of attracting young people to Maine. And you were kind of talking about your experiences in the different places that you've lived, and I'm wondering if you'd like to touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I think if no one ever left Maine and returned, Maine would be really boring and I wouldn't live here, frankly. I have plenty of friends who are some of my favorite people on the planet, and they've lived in Maine their entire lives. And they're awesome. And I love Maine. It's my favorite place in the world. That's why I live here. But I think there's also, there just isn't the job market in Maine to support all of the college-educated students that we're turning out. Like, the jobs are here. They're just not turning over. The economy is tight. People aren't leaving their jobs when we thought they were going to leave their jobs. So a lot of people go away to college, and, most of my friends from high school went away to college, and they are living in big cities, working, doing great stuff for their careers, making money, whatever. They want to come back to Maine, but they don't feel that there's a job that can challenge them or provide them the mobility or provide them the salary that they're making elsewhere. And, in further conversation, a lot of my friends would gladly sacrifice some of these things to be able to come to Maine. And I have friends who have looked for these types of jobs in Maine hard, and they're just really hard to find. Friends at the university who graduate and spend months looking for the kinds of career-oriented jobs that they want, that they've been training for and spending so much money to be trained for in Maine. And they're just hard to find. So I think what you find, and Melanie will be able to speak to this as well, is that, that one, it's an asset for young people to leave Maine and come back. And two, we need to do a better job of creating space for them to come back.
I believe we have a caller on the line. Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, indeed.
Great. Can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, this is Jay. I'm calling from Sedgwick.
Hi, Jay.
Which is just barely part of the Bangor area, but it is, our big city in the area. And down here on the peninsula, we look to Blue Hill as kind of the Shire town, and then Ellsworth, and then Bangor. But one of the things that I'm always trying to advocate in comparing cities the size of Bangor is cities of similar size in the Midwest, where I came from, and the rail link that used to be there in Bangor has been gone for 40 or 50 years, probably 50 years. And I'm just wondering if any of your guests have any sort of advocacy position about trying to get the rail link to the rest of Maine, the Amtrak service, back to Bangor. I think it would provide an incredible boost if it was easy for people that didn't have to rely on cars to be able to hop on the train and get linked to the rest of the country. Portland first, and then on, and it would also bring a lot more people up from the rest of New England and the Northeast. So I'll hang up and listen to what your guests have to say as to what they think the future of rail service might be. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay.
Hey, Jay. I am no expert on this whatsoever, but I do know that any sort of rail that would ever happen here needs to be demand-driven, and right now there isn't enough demand to run regular buses, which are far less expensive to run at an entry level than building a big expensive rail line. So, huge advocate, but I just think there needs to be that more demand.
Yeah, and the same issue with air travel too, of course. I mean, Bangor International Airport has very few regular flights out of it every day. Were there the demand, you might see an uptick in that. And who knows, maybe in 5 years that might that might change. Who knows? But yeah, like I just echo what Johann said. That's probably the biggest issue, is that sort of the population density isn't really there.
What about the issue of public transportation in general and non-personal car transportation? Did you have something to say about that, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I will comment a little bit. When I lived in upstate New York, it was accessible to the city in an hour on a train and to a number of other communities as well. And one of the hardest things for me about moving back to Maine was how far I was going to have to drive to get anywhere. And Bangor now feels very, very close to me. It's 10 minutes. And I was used to things being walkable. So I think it's a little bit of a different understanding of community that you have to have in Maine a little bit in terms of what you're going to have to do to get somewhere. People try to carpool, you ride your bike where you can, but it's not, that's the thing that appeals to me, I guess, about revitalizing the downtown is that walkable aspect of it. But it's tough. I'm not sure really what the answer is. I agree. I don't think there's the demand for a train line. I think it's too bad, but I don't know. I guess for me, I just had to get used to driving again.
I think one great thing about having more young people in Maine is we were just talking about it on the drive out here. Young people love to walk and bike around, and they love to live downtown and be able to kind of, live, work, and play downtown. So if other people want to live in the countryside, maybe young people will move downtown in Bangor.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to WERU, your community radio station, 89.9 in Blue Hill and 99.9 in Bangor. And the show today is Bangor Area Commons. We're a monthly show from 10 to 11, usually on first Thursdays. We moved today to Monday. But our guests in the studio are Dailey, who works at Peacemeal Farm in Dixmont, who's also a writer, has written in New York, and Johann Sabbath, who works with Fusion Bangor, which is a program of the Bangor Chamber of Commerce that works with young people and events in the area. Emily Burnham from the Bangor Daily News, and Melanie Brooks, who's from the Bangor Metro and also is involved in Fusion Bangor. And the phone lines are open. We'd love to take your calls, your questions, your comments, whatever you'd like to add to the discussion. The number is 469-0500.
I actually had something that I wanted to mention from what Johann was saying about jobs, is that what I have found is that unless you're a teacher or a nurse, it's very hard to find a good entry-level job here. And I think that's why a lot of people will go to the universities and then move away. They'll move away to cities to get that entry-level experience. And what I found from just people that I know that have moved to Boston, moved to New York, they tend to come back to Maine when they're at that level where they can get a job that's not an entry level, that's probably the next level up, managerial position, where they can support, a husband, a wife, their family. They come back here to have kids. But until we have that sort of mecca for entry-level jobs, it's going to be hard for kids to stay here out of college. And I don't think it's a bad thing for kids to go away. And, that's what I did, got experience outside of Maine, and then decided to come back for the work-life experience. I think that's really important because you get a whole group of younger professionals coming back that have very different experiences out in the rest of the country or the rest of the world.
We have another caller on the line. Caller, can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, my name is Cara Romano. I'm calling from Ellsworth, Maine. I just wanted to state that there is sort of a revitalization that's going on in the Ellsworth downtown. Ellsworth's kind of a smaller city and doesn't really get a lot of press, but we have a great building that two people have purchased, and it's called the Maine Grind. It's sort of what the building's known as, but Leslie Harlow and Peter, I can't remember his last name, but they have both sort of redone the building upstairs and put a bunch of office spaces in and have really kind of created a professional environment for people to be able to rent spaces and conduct all sorts of different businesses out of that building. And it sort of doesn't get a lot of press because Ellsworth's a little bit smaller than Bangor, but there's lots of great things going on in the Ellsworth downtown area, and just wanted to kind of put it out there to everybody that's listening and on the show.
Great. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
Well, I want to say that brings up a really great point. And one thing that I think Bangor, in terms of, being able to support and sustain small businesses and to attract people to those businesses, they can really take a cue from places like Ellsworth and Belfast and Rockland, is those communities have really opened their doors and made it as in a lot of ways as easy as possible for that to happen. There's a lot of unused space in downtown Bangor. You walk around and just look at the, you don't even realize they're empty, and there's, these gems out there. And then you have a place like the Maine Grind, this huge building that's been repurposed into these great shops, this exercise facility, and a fantastic coffee shop, among others. that, we haven't really seen that in Bangor yet. I think that speaks a little bit to what Johann was saying about a co-working space. But I think it's only a matter of time before you see that. And I think, especially in Ellsworth and Belfast and Rockland, sometimes, I love Belfast, but it's one of my, I grew up there, so I'm down there quite a bit. And you walk around and you say, God, there's, there's what they say, 27 new businesses have opened this year. It's crazy. It's just crazy how successful that's been. I'm sure there will be quite a bit of turnover in that, but nevertheless, I think if Bangor is obviously a much bigger community than that and has more sort of things to tangle with in terms of population and stuff, but if that's one thing we can learn from the smaller communities in Maine is to just sort of don't worry about it. Let people come in and do their thing. Don't stress out about it. They'll do a good job. And if they don't, they'll close.
I believe we have another caller on the line. Caller, can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, it's Dan from Surrey.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. I just wanted to address the retirement population. Maine is probably one of the highest retired areas in the nation, I would imagine. There's a lot of influx of retirees coming from different areas. And how does that affect business? And how could young people be integrated in the idea of working and serving the elderly population? Or in some ways, combining the arts? I was thinking that would be kind of interesting, the idea of having people, older people come in and support more art, and culture in general, and bringing in more culture. But the idea of the retirement, addressing the retirees and the elderly population in Maine, because there's such a high percentage. So having some sort of balance between the two, is that something that has anybody ever really addressed? Or it's kind of a general question that I'm just,
sure. Yeah, engaging both the young community and the older retired community.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your call, Dan.
Sure, no problem.
Would anybody like to speak to that question? What kind of Anne, you were talking about it a little bit before in terms of what an important resource it is to have an older generation to really draw from and look to as a young farmer.
Absolutely, I think that there is a large population of Maine that is of retirement age, but not. I wouldn't go so far as to say elderly necessarily. That are still working or getting ready to stop working, who do have a lot to offer. And I think that something that I think a lot about is how to. I think of it as a writer and storytelling, but how to reach out to a population that has a lot to offer, and not in terms of nostalgia, but in terms of actual life lessons, wisdom, resources, literal tools. It's making that connection, and I guess I'm not entirely sure what the best way is to do that. I think that for me, it's starting conversations and telling stories. But whatever that is, I think that bringing these two communities together is very, very important. And I don't know, maybe there needs to be an event that does that. Or
I was thinking some sort of mentoring program.
Exactly.
What is so great about the people that are retiring, that generation, is that they have the most valuable thing on their side, which is time. They can volunteer. They can basically share their knowledge any time of the day. And if we could get together and find some way to have a mentoring program between, and I'm sure like the you were saying the farm link, share their business acumen with people that are just starting out or need some information. I know SCORE uses people that are retired as mentors. I think that's a great resource.
I believe we might have another caller on the line. Caller, can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Ivor. I'm calling from Swans Island. And I live in Skowhegan in the winter. And I was going to say that a lot of the biggest growth industries in like central Maine, or the places that seem to be growing, are Johnny Selected Seeds, Fedco and that big tomato operation, the Backyard Farms in Madison. So it seems like, to me, like there's actually a lot of possibility with places like that. And I don't know how we can make it happen, but it would be great if we could figure out a way to do more of that here in Maine.
Great, thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love Maine and I love the entrepreneurial spirit, but I think something that is often displaced within our entrepreneurial values in Maine is a sense of scalability. And I know, for example, my father, I always asked him, well, Dad, your business is so interesting and you're doing so well. Why don't you grow your business and carry more products? And he was just happy running it just the way it was, didn't have to work too hard, lived a real high quality life, and that was that. There's a great new program starting in the Bangor region called the Top Gun Entrepreneurship Program, and it is uniquely positioned it takes entrepreneurs who have an aggressive, scalable vision for their business, and it trains them to actually, go out there and learn to pitch their business and get after a scalable vision so that they can raise investment, whether it's from a bank or from an angel capitalist or a venture capitalist. So I think that's something that the business community really needs, is more scalable vision.
We have just a couple more minutes. We'd love to take a couple more calls. You're listening to Bangor Area Commons on WERU, and the number to call in is 469-0500. The topic for today is attracting young people to Maine, and in particular, attracting young people to the greater Bangor area. I believe we have another caller on the line. Can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, it's Ivor again, and I wanted to say that what I wanted about those businesses is they're agricultural-based businesses. And I feel like as the fossil fuel economy starts to falter or have trouble, I think we're going to need more, downtown businesses, and we're also going to need more agricultural businesses, because those are the two things that can, even as we go over the peak in oil production, we have less fossil fuel energy. So I wanted to say that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for calling to clarify. So, yeah, the question or the issue of Maine being a place that's supporting culture of transition away from fossil fuels, supporting agriculture. Yeah.
Well, I think that's definitely true. Just looking at, the rise in alternative fuel sources, like, places like Revision Energy and, the various solar energy places that have popped up all up and down the coast. You've seen an uptick in that. You've seen an uptick in kind of, maybe on a different end of it, the more DIY end of culture, like you have a place like Central Street Farmhouse in downtown Bangor that focuses on doing it yourself, learning how to brew your own beer, make your own cheese, preserve your own vegetables, whatever it might be. I think, it's still kind of slow going, just as that transition is slow going, but the more that occurs, the more you're going to see things pop up in order to support that. I just think it's sort of a waiting and seeing kind of thing at this point. But I think that's sort of an inevitable thing that'll happen, Yeah.
Just to fill everyone in, Anne, could you tell us a little bit about the businesses that the caller was speaking about?
Sure. He mentioned Backyard Farms, which I believe is a hydroponic? I'm not sure. It's a large tomato grower. He mentioned Johnny's Selected Seeds, which is actually where I work in the winter, and Fedco Seeds and Fedco Trees. And they do a lot more than seeds. I worked in the call center in Johnny's this winter, so I was certainly witnessing the growth of that company as it has been growing so much over the past couple of years. But, hearing all of the new growers and new farmers on the phone placing orders. So I agree. I find that those companies are fascinating. They really are making it work, and they are creating jobs. Johnny's employs, I believe, over 200 people now in various aspects of that business. So it's exciting, and they are hiring more people every year. And I think that it is a really good model of something that is Maine-based and has the feel. It almost still feels like a small company. I was saying to someone the other day in New York that I work at a small seed company in Maine, and then I said, well, it's actually not that small. It's Johnny's. And they said, of course it's not that small. It's huge. But it feels small and it feels community-based. And I think that's a really interesting thing to be thinking about when we think about a business that can grow in Maine, is that it still have that feel that this state has, that it's small and homespun a little bit, and everyone you work with, and that you're, marketing something to people directly.
Yeah, I know more than a handful of people that work seasonally with Fedco also, and it really supports whatever other work they're doing throughout the year. They're able to really support themselves for a good while. They're hiring a lot of people out of there.
Those are those great jobs that you were talking about, those entry-level jobs and those things that are like, that's prime for young people, anything in that realm. There's plenty of other great employers. There's like, for some reason, Moss Tent springs to mind in Belfast. They employ a lot of people. They're great. There's Spectrum Solutions and what is it called? There's a place in VC that does Collabrix, whatever. Yeah, that's not even close to the same name, but you know what I'm talking about. But there's places like that. I mean, they're all not just in agriculture and in sustainable energy, but far beyond that. It's that kind of stuff that really drives the engine in a big way, for sure.
We have just a couple more minutes. You're listening to Bangor Area Commons. I'd just like to thank our guests for coming on today and give you an opportunity to just tell us if there's websites you want to share or contact information. Tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you do.
Sure.
Yeah, just in the last couple minutes.
Bangor Metro has a brand new website up. You should check it out. It's bangormetro.com. And it's all new. So you can go on and read our features and submit business news, and we'll get it in the magazine.
Great, and that's Melanie Brooks from managing editor at Bangor Metro. Yeah.
And you can go to BangorDailyNews.com and read all of our stuff, and you can subscribe to the paper too, because we still put out a print edition. And and I'm I write for the lifestyle section, so we cover the whole gamut of arts and entertainment to food and lifestyle to anything in between. That's in every day of the paper. So BangorDailyNews.com. That's our website.
Great, thank you.
And I would encourage people to check out fusionbangor.org for information about fusion events, and also the Pachakacha events information is there. And also check out Facebook/Bangor Greendrinks.
Which we will be hosting tomorrow in partnership with Market Bistro.
Yeah, tomorrow, 5 to 8 p.m. At Market Bistro in Bangor. That'll be fun.
I would definitely urge anyone who's interested in farming to check out MOFGA, MOFGA.org, MOFGA, Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. It's a tremendous organization. If you had any questions for me specifically about farming, I also work with the Greenhorns, which is a national young farmer organization. And my website is poundsweet.net, and you can contact me that way if you had any questions about getting started on the farm.
And Dailey.
And Dailey, yes.
Thank you very much. You have been listening to Bangor Area Commons, a monthly show about people, issues, and arts in the Bangor area. I'm Meaghan LaSala, and of course this is your community radio station, WERU-FM, 89.9 Blue Hill and 99.9 in Bangor.
Bye, Meaghan. We'll miss you.